10 things that are sure to get you excited for Nebraska football this year.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day.
Okay, welcome in. It is Tuesday, June 16th, a special day at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will explain that in a minute. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone and Westwood One is here with me on this day. We are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network. This network is the #1 sports podcast network, as you've heard us say to you every day, and it is growing. So thank you for listening and for being a part of our success, the network's success, and all that goes with us. And thanks, of course, to David Locke for his innovation in starting all of this up 10 years ago. It's been exactly 10 years. We've been a part of it for just over 2.
2.5.
Yeah, that's good. It's good stuff. So in honor of the 10-year anniversary, we're going to spend a show today on a topic, 10 topics that are sure to make you feel passionate one way or the other about Nebraska football in 2026. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing. I think it is at least an appropriate tribute to the fact that Locked On is 10 years old. We did not go above and beyond, but that seems like a very appropriate thing for this very podcast.
If you're interested in other celebrations, you can go check out shows all across the Locked On Podcast Network. Maybe your favorite NBA team or MLB team or your rival college football team. It has some things that would be interesting to you and you want to see a countdown. It might not be like this. In fact, it probably won't be the 10 things that make you feel most passionate in 2026. No. It could be a countdown of something else. So that's what makes this whole exercise a fun one. Go check out and see what they're talking about over in Iowa or up in Minnesota or Colorado or whatever it might be.
So this is basically the list of like topics that will or areas of the Nebraska football team that will sort of decide their success this year.
Yeah,
I think
so.
These are crucial questions for Nebraska football this upcoming year. So it'll be good to lay this out sort of in order, most important, least important, things like that.
It's also kind of a refresher because we've been talking about a lot of stuff recently. Like we spent a lot of time on baseball and softball, and we've talked about recruiting. And there have been all kinds of stories that have happened nationally and how they impact Nebraska, whether it's court cases or eligibility. By the way, thank you for playing college football, Brendan Sorsby. He is now moving on to the National Football League. So that was a bomb to the landscape of the sport that quickly dissipated. But what we haven't done in recent episodes is like dig into the nuts and bolts of Nebraska football. And like we were saying before we started recording here, it's June 16th. Not only is it the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network, it is the middle of June. It is the second half of June. And this is a massive month for Nebraska football and for college football, not just because of the recruiting implications. Nebraska's had 2 of 3 significant recruiting weekends that are now over. The third one is coming up starting on Friday, 3 days from now. But it's also the time when the team is reconvening and getting on the practice field and running through drills and doing installations and essentially practicing to get ready for training camp. They're not hitting, they're not in pads, but it's an under the radar huge time for the success of the 2026 Nebraska football team. We heard from Matt Rhule. We'll get to the list in a minute, but we heard from Matt Rhule. This was an interview that he did with Herdat during or before the Savannah Bananas game on Saturday night. He told Anna Bellinghausen that he believes that this Nebraska football team is his best one yet. And it wasn't even like, I believe it. It was like, this is the best one yet that I've had at Nebraska in 4 years. So I think that is the most definitive, like optimistic statement that Matt Rhule has made about this team since this new year began.
Yeah,
That's okay. Say that. He didn't say that in the spring, did he?
No, I don't think so. Not that I recall. But anyway, let's do it. Let's do the list here before we get too far sidetracked in the other direction. In true Locked On Nebraska fashion, we are beginning with number 10 at running backs, running back depth, and the questions at the position. How do you replace Emma Johnson? Who's going to take that first carry? Who could potentially contribute to the room that we do not know or might not be on the radar at this point? It is a wide open field, I think, at the spot, Mitch, and they're going to need production from running backs.
For me, the question is about Jamal Rhule and whether he's somebody that can upgrade the position. Is this guy the real deal? We know, or we think we know, what Nebraska has. They're improved players for sure, but we think we know what Nebraska has in Mekhi Nelson, Isaiah Mosey, and Quentin Ives, who are the top, the veterans, the returning veterans at that spot. Mosey is just a second-year player, but he's been in the program. And Jamal Rhule is the newcomer, the true freshman, who was a star in the spring. And I really think that a lot of what this position looks like at the end of the year is going to come down to how much he's able to contribute that, and also what kind of development has Mosey made from year 1 to year 2. I think he can be kind of an X factor for Nebraska.
I agree with you. I think if we're talking about Rhule, I think he's a tremendous swing piece for the position. I mean, you don't want to get too overexcited about freshmen. And so I haven't been this entire time, but frankly, they do need somebody else in the room to pop a little bit, just given what we've seen from the other people at the position at this point. I just think another guy who could potentially give you some carries or some sort of a different look would really help at that spot. So he is definitely one of the top guys I'll be watching when, summer workouts continue and as we go into the fall. Number 9, the recruiting, as we've talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks. Nebraska's off to a strong start in their recruiting class, and they're trying to finish it off here down the stretch. They have Trey Taylor in the bank right now, and he'll come up a little bit later on this list, by the way. But can they keep it on track, or even potentially with a good season, enhance the profile of the 2027 recruiting class?
That's going to be a big question when you get into October and November. Is okay. Number one priority is to hold on to the big names and all of the names in this class. And some of the biggest of the big names are coming in to visit this coming weekend, June 19th and 20th, that being Trey Taylor, the quarterback, Torrey Pittman, the defensive back from Millard North, Amir Brown, the running back out of North Carolina, Tay Ellis, Matt Erickson, Jordan Travers. They're all coming in this weekend. But priority number 1, retain, hold on to those commitments. And then number 2, if Nebraska has momentum in the 2026 season, can it add in some big pieces? The biggest fish, the biggest piece that it could potentially add in would be Ahmad Hudson, the tight end from Louisiana. But even if it's not him, even if that's unrealistic, and he is set to be alongside Lane Kiffin at LSU, then who else is out there? There will be players that likely pop onto the radar in the fall when things get going. There are players who are coming in still yet in this month of June. We talked yesterday, Monday on the program, about Khalil Taylor, the wide receiver from Pennsylvania, who looks and sounds every bit like a strong Penn State lean. He has been, as a player from Pittsburgh would, to the Penn State campus many, many, many times. But the fact that Nebraska's getting him on a visit this weekend is indicative of the momentum that Matt Rhule and this coaching staff have created with the 2027 class. So a big storyline that I think is going to make people, that's going to shape the opinion of Nebraska fans, shape the feelings of Nebraska fans, is going to be, can they continue the momentum? They have 18 commits right now. They're a top 20 class in the country. Can they finish this thing out? Because they're probably only going to sign 21, 22 players. So what do those final pieces look like? And can they add a 5-star diamond to it?
Yep, people will be paying great attention to the recruiting class for a variety of different reasons, one of which we'll talk about later on in the list. One more before we take a break. Number 8, Rob Orich's defense. What does it look like? What's the style? Does Matt Rhule finally get back to his roots as from when he started here at Nebraska? Is Rob Orich the new Tony White? All of these are questions.
Bo Pelini.
Or is he Bo Pelini? Who knows? What is Rob Orich? Me? I have no idea. But he is a central figure in Nebraska's success this year.
Yeah, there we are. It's really intriguing when you bring in a coordinator and you hand him, this much. He's got a lot in his hands. Sometimes a coordinator comes in, it's like, okay, this is not the most important thing in the program. Like you've got solid pieces in other areas of the game. And with Nebraska and the changes that it's made on special teams and with a new quarterback and, what's the offense going to look like this year in full year 2 under Dana Holgorsen, it feels to me like Orich's defense it has to be a cornerstone of this team. And in part because when Matt Rhule has built, he says this is his best team. All right. His best teams historically have leaned on strong defenses. I don't really see a situation, no matter how good the offense is, no matter what they can do with Calandria this year, I have a hard time envisioning a formula where Matt Rhule has his best team at Nebraska and they're not leaning on the defense. So
I agree. I agree with you completely. That's the way they're going to have to do it. And maybe you feel good about the offensive direction it's headed. It's just not. It's not going to be something that's consistently good enough for you to be able to say we are that team. We are an offensive team. They're going to be a defensive team. They're going to win that way. It needs to take a big jump up, coming from what it was especially at the end of last year. How big will, in a lot of ways, define the success and the failure of this season?
And really, it comes down to, I think, when you talk about the look and feel of the defense, I feel good about what they're going to be able to do in defending the pass. I just do, because of how they've played in the past, because of who Orich is and the coaches that Nebraska has and the players that Nebraska has, experience in the secondary. It's ultimately going to come down to their ability to stop the run. It just is. That's the Big Ten. So to me, that's the boiled down question. Can Nebraska stop the run in 2026? And
we'll talk about that more as we go on throughout the list as well. We will come back with number 7, which suffered a big loss this past offseason after this.
Right now, a word from Rugiet. The NHL finals, they are over, but they were very exciting. They were very thrilling. Carolina Panthers, congrats to them on lifting the Stanley Cup. And throughout Carolina Hurricanes. Yes, the Panthers play in the NFL. Pardon me. Thank you for the correction. Carolina Hurricanes, congrats. I got it wrong. Throughout the NHL finals, every shift mattered. Every moment was intense. Everything came down to execution when the pressure was at its highest. And just like those athletes who had to be ready to perform when the puck dropped, a lot of guys want that same sense of readiness and confidence in their own lives too. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet offers modern, performance-focused treatments designed to help you be ready when it matters. Their top option, Rugiet Ready, is fast-acting, clinically formulated treatment that comes in a simple mint that dissolves right under your tongue. It's designed for convenience with fast absorption and the effects that can begin in 15 minutes and may last up to 36 hours. Rugiet offers Go Long, which is formulated to support both performance and control for longer-lasting needs. It's about helping guys feel prepared, confident, and in control. Yes, you want to be prepared, and more than anything, you want to be ready. On top of that, control matters. So when you're not worrying about whether things work out, Rugiet lets you stay focused and in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. Yes, NHL. Congrats to the Carolina Hurricanes, and get 15% off your ED treatment. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL for 15% off. Rugiet, performance medicine for men.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Join the Everydayer Club today. Ad-free episodes, access the group chat on Discord. Head to lockedonnebraska.supercast.com or tap the link in the description to this episode. Number 7 on the list of most intriguing things to get you excited about the 2026 Nebraska football Cornhuskers. How do special teams come together? Can they continue off of the success that Mike Eckler, special teams coordinator, now departed Mike Eckler for USC, can they continue off of the successes of last year when it made a giant jump from one of the worst special teams units in America to, frankly, one of the best? What happens, and does it fall? How far does it fall? And how much will that dictate how far Nebraska goes this year?
Yeah, we don't want to be covering our eyes when special teams become a part of the game that's on the stage. You don't want special teams. Dilemma. You don't want to be talking about it like that when Nebraska's kicking game is a part of things. Nebraska has experienced that. Nebraska fans have experienced that, and Mike Eckler he fixed it in 2025, and then he left to go to USC. And Nebraska, Matt Rhule has handed the baton to Brett Maher and Nick Humphrey. It's funny, like how quickly, by the way, not to get too off topic, like we forgot about this storyline. I was like, who's Nebraska's special teams coordinator? When I was thinking about this on Monday, oh yeah, it's Brett Maher and Nick Humphrey. Like that's a big job and a big deal. And I believe that both of them are competent and fully able to coach special teams. But like, is this the right time? Is this the right moment? Is this the right setup for them to be able to combine their powers and lead the Nebraska special teams to a successful season? We'll find out, and it's going to stoke a lot of emotions either way.
There's no doubt about it. How good will they be compared? The other thing that you're working with is not only how good are they going to be, but how good will they be compared to last year? Will be a topic of conversation with this thing too, because of how the previous special teams coordinator left things. Number 6. So talking about guys who have been added to the coaching staff, we mentioned a few already. How do those guys settle in, and are they upgrades over their predecessors? So Jeep Wade on the offensive line, Lonnie Teasley as well. Brett Maher and Nick Humphrey, we talked about with special teams. Rob Orich as a defensive coordinator. Corey Brown on the defensive line. Roy Manning coaching the edges. Well, all of those guys are going to, have big jobs on their hands this upcoming year. So how do they end up? Do they have any dudes, fast risers in that group? Time will tell, but that'll make up a lot of what Nebraska goes through this year.
Yeah. You talk about like overlooked storylines or things that like we've kind of glossed over and maybe forgotten. Nebraska has 7 assistant coaches this year who are either new to the program or in completely new roles. And Maher and Humphrey were with the Huskers last year, but Maher had an important role. He was coaching the kickers and the punters. Humphrey was the understudy, so to speak, to Eckler. He came with Eckler from Tennessee. So those 2 were around. And then 5 others who are entirely new to Nebraska, including Orich, who we've spent time on. I think so far the biggest hit, the biggest splash has been Jeep Wade, because of what he's been able to do first in assembling or helping assemble an offensive line that appears to have 3 relatively big time transfers in positions to start. And then number 2, the job that he's done as a recruiter in taking Nebraska into the state of Georgia, where it has a big chunk of this 2027 recruiting class. But when we look back on this in December, are we going to say that Nebraska needs the majority, if not all, of these coaches? Oh, we won't say special teams. Special teams, they need to like hold serve. But the rest of these hires, they have to be upgrades. They have to be an upgrade on the offensive line. They need an upgrade at D coordinator, and they need an upgrade on the defensive line where Corey Brown and Roy Manning work.
Yep. And how many upgrades you get will tell part of the story about this season. There's no doubt about that. Number 5 is the Trey Taylor sideshow, in air quotes, not to make it sound like a bad thing. The Trey
not
Taylor,
a circus. It's not.
How about this, Mitch? Trey Taylor's presence.
Yeah, it's significant. This is the number 1 quarterback in the country. That we don't need reminding about. That is not under the radar. That has been at the forefront of our minds here in the months of June. He was elevated by 24/7 to the number 1 QB spot nationally just in the last few days. 5-star, top 10 player nationally, and he's playing at Millard South. You can go watch Trey Taylor on August 28th at 153rd and Q Street throw the ball around. In what is honestly, when you think about it, like when that day arrives, when that week arrives, and we're anticipating that game, it will be one of the more anticipated high school moments. Like usually there's anticipation around the state championship game, like last year when Jet Tamala, the Alabama commit, at the time now freshman, and Omaha West Side were about to square off. There was anticipation. They're going to be in Memorial Stadium. There's going to be more anticipation around this Trey Taylor versus Torrey Pittman and Matt Erickson and Tay Ellis, like all on the field at the same time, and some other players too. August 28th opener at Buell Stadium that I think we've seen for a high school game in quite some time.
Yeah, I think so too. And this will be a topic all throughout the fall, and especially if Nebraska lacks success on the football field, this will get even louder because people, he'll still be here, and then you start to wonder about his commitment or whatever it might be. So this will be a very present thing during the months of September through December.
His passes are all going to be dissected, and it's a little bit unfair to Trey because he's not throwing to he's not throwing to Ja'Cory Barney at no offense to Tay Ellis, who's a very good receiver, but he's not throwing to Isaiah Hunter at Millard South this year. And there are going to be dropped passes, and there are going to be plays that look out of sync. But he's a very smooth looking player, Trey Taylor. I mean, and it's going to be fascinating to see. I don't know that we've ever had a quarterback in this state or a high school football player in the state who's going to be more watched than what Trey Taylor will be all through the fall.
One more thing that will be happening in the background a bit, that has been a hot button issue, number 4 on our list, Matt Rhule's other stuff. Matt Rhule's extracurriculars. Will Matt Rhule still have a podcast? Will Matt Rhule still go on Pat McAfee's show? My gut says no on both, but it will be talked about.
What about the $5 million that was redirected to his for that Nebraska purchased for his NIL? NIL is a weird thing to say because that's the way it was phrased in media reports. Nebraska bought the rights to, I don't know, promote Matt Rhule, I suppose. You think that just kind of slides away, and it's just money in his pocket, and they're not going to be a podcast. There certainly hasn't been any kind of movement on the podcast front here in the off season. I would probably lean toward what you said and say that like a lot of that stuff is going to go away. It'll be interesting to hear his take on that. It'll come up at Big Ten Media Days for sure, in Chicago in about 5 weeks. What is Matt Rhule going to do outside of football this year? Because that was a big talking point, especially when Nebraska started losing games in 2025.
It'll be funny when he has to explain in front of the media because the media will ask him, "Hey, why? You've been quiet. What's going on?" He's like, "Yeah, I've been really trying to be." He'll have to explain loudly why he's been quiet, which is always a fun dichotomy to sort of pull apart. But yeah, no, I think I think it'll continue this way. I think he's gonna be low key, a little bit more laid back.
A bunch of guys and gals who have podcasts asking Matt Rhule why he does or doesn't have a podcast.
That's right. That is exactly what you can expect. Our top 3 are the big moments when we return. First word from Indeed, workplace chaos can show up fast. Deadlines are stacking up. Projects need attention. On top of everything else, you're trying to fill an important role. The problem is that finding the right candidate could take a lot more time than most businesses can afford. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, location. So you're spending less time sorting through applications and more time talking to qualified people who can help your business succeed. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building business or building a winning team. The organizations that consistently succeed know how important it is to identify the right talent and put them in position to succeed. So some of the best moves organizations can make are not always the splashiest ones. Sometimes it's about finding the right person who fits exactly what you need and exactly at that right time, or a role that you didn't know that you really needed to fill with an excellent candidate. That's what Indeed Sponsored Jobs is going to help you do. Connect organizations with candidates who are right fits from the start. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Okay, welcome back. This is the final episode of a Tuesday episode. We're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network with a countdown of 10 issues in Nebraska football that are sure to get you excited one way or the other in 2026. I am excited about going through these last three. I feel like these last three, for me, are pretty clearly the three things that are going to drive the conversation around the Huskers over the 6 months ahead. So number three, the ranked win streak, or the ranked loss streak. The Nebraska has lost 30 consecutive games against ranked opponents. The Utah game in the Las Vegas Bowl was number 30. Matt Rhule's 0-9. Nebraska's last ranked win came against Oregon on September 17th, 2016. That was right after the Locked On Podcast Network launched. So there'll be a 10-year anniversary that I would imagine not a lot of people around Nebraska will be celebrating in the middle of September. Nebraska will not have a chance to break the ranked win streak before it reaches 10 years. And that opportunity will, though, almost certainly, I would say you can take it to the bank. That opportunity will come up in Big Ten season. Nebraska will play a ranked team. I'm going to go out on a limb here in 2026. And what happens?
Their first chance will very likely be against a number one team in the country, or at least a top three team in the country in Indiana.
About the Hoosiers?
I'm talking about the Indiana Hoosiers. If you would have told me that when the streak started 10 years ago, I would have said you are insane from a variety of different
directions. You think Indiana will be ranked number one when Kurt Signetti comes to Lincoln?
I mean, I don't know. They're going to come into the season top three. So, yeah so they're going to be right in that conversation. Maybe them or Oregon or something like that. Maybe Texas.
Or Ohio State, Texas. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. So
they got Signetti. So
this is the big thing for me. This is my number one. This has to change this year. This absolutely has to change this year. Nebraska has to get a ranked win this year. They need a jolt for their program. They need to spark. They need to show. They need to give other people on the outside, from a perception standpoint, reason to believe that this has a chance. And ideally, you would have shown that by now with a win against a ranked team. But I don't know that it always has to work this way, and I don't know that it's a great thing that it does work this way. But this is what gets people's attention: winning games against teams that you're not supposed to win games against. This is the story. Nebraska has to do that at least once this year. The streak has to end.
This one, it ties in directly to number number 9 on the list, which is the momentum that Nebraska needs to keep around the 2027 recruiting class. I think in order for that to happen, in order for Nebraska to succeed at number 9, it's got to accomplish number 3. Like there's no turning back at this point. If you go through another year and you go 0 for the field against ranked opponents, then you're going to take some hits in your perception, and it's going to be felt in the recruiting game.
Yep. Number 2 is quarterback play. Oh, it will be a topic because it's always a topic. What will come? I mean, there is a wide variance of what we could potentially get from Tony, Big Tone Calandria, who is Nebraska's quarterback this year. What will they get from him? Might help tell the story of the season.
Yeah, the gunslinger, turnover issues at times in his career when he's played against P4 competition. He seemed to fix that last year and ascending to the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year at UNLV, gets back in the game in the Power 4, moving to the Big Ten. He's a senior. He's been through the grind. May have another year of eligibility after this season, but that's neither here nor there in this discussion. And I like what I've seen, the vibes that I've gotten so far from Anthony Calandria. I don't feel like it's forced. I feel like he's like naturally fit into the position. Like there's nothing that's like fake about his role within the team. Yeah, we'll see how that looks in September. It's always a huge issue, the quarterback play. And this year is no exception. In fact, I think it's amplified. It's magnified this year because of there's a lot of variance. There's a lot of volatility in his game. If Nebraska had an offense where you handed off 70% of the time, or they ran the option, or it was built around, check downs and short passes to the tight ends and the backs, then this wouldn't be as big of an issue. It might fit number 7, number 6 on the list, but that's not Anthony Calandria's game. That's not, honestly, Dana Holgerson's game when he's been at his best. So this is high on the list, and will be dissected weekly.
High wire act. You don't know what you're getting. That's for sure. So this will tell a big part of the story. Number 1, and I feel like you could just pencil this in for basically every year, certainly since Nebraska has been in the Big Ten. How do they hold up front? Last year, the answer to the question was bad, really on both sides, but more specifically on the defensive side. So how did Nebraska build that defensive line room, and how did they supplement their offensive line room? On paper, it seems pretty good. Can they match up with their giant conference foes?
Yeah, this is almost two conversations in my mind. I feel like on the offensive side, Nebraska has answered the questions. And here going into July, in a couple of weeks when camp will open, they feel good about what has happened with Paul Mubenga, Tree Babalade, Brendan Black, the new penciled in starters up front to go with Elijah Pritchett at left tackle and Justin Evans at center. Like, it's a good looking, experienced, big, physical offensive line full of players who aren't like hobbled, and you're hoping to get one more season out of them because they've been through injuries over the course of their career. And they have some competent backups, some players that have experience like Tyler Kanak and like Gunnar Gatula. So I feel like the offensive line is in, if you get a rash of injuries, you got big problems. But I feel like the offensive line with Jeep Wade and Lonnie Teasley, like, I feel good about it going into the year. Do I feel fantastic, like it's bulletproof? No, but I feel good about it. Defensively, I don't know. I'm not going to say that I feel bad, but I'm skeptical. I think there's reason to be concerned. I have a lot of optimism about Cade Petschak, the young sophomore D tackle. I feel like Cam Lenhart can come into his own this year. I feel like Riley Van Poppel can come into his own this year. I feel like we saw in Jasir Whittington some flashes in the spring. I think Anthony Jones is a key piece that they've added on the edge. Williams Winery, should have mentioned him right at the beginning. Love what his potential is. But are you, if you're Corey Brown and Rob Orich and Roy Manning, like, are they ready? Are they ready to be a Big Ten defensive line? I do not know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, I feel like they're in much better position than they were last year, both from a talent perspective and age perspective and all those things, and potentially a coaching perspective as well. I think the defense behind them has a chance to help them more. They need to get good linebacker play and they need to get good defensive back play. It has to work in concert all together, sort of as one. Otherwise, everybody ends up looking bad. But I don't think you'll be seeing the giant creases quite as much this year. They need to be fundamentally better, and I think they will be. How far can that take them, and can they build off of that is ultimately my question. I expect Nebraska to always have a solid defense to good. They were not that last year. I think they'll bounce back to that. It's just how much further can you go beyond that? Does this have the makings of a really good defense? I'm not sure. So that'll be a question that we'll be able to try and answer in the first couple weeks of the season.
Orich has been a guy who starts quick, who gets in places, whether it was Idaho or San Diego State, and gets things off the ground, makes a quick turnaround, and he's going to need those traits here in 2026. And again, to hammer home the point of this whole list, this is something, maybe the main thing, that is going to have people on the edge of their seats through this season. What is the defensive line? What does the offensive line look like? Are they winning the battle at the line of scrimmage? And I think it's a worthwhile thing to be excited and I mean, like, anxious and wanting to know the answer to, because it will determine a lot about Nebraska football over the next year.
No doubt. Thanks for listening today. Appreciate it. Be sure to join us tomorrow. And congratulations to Locked On for 10 years. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is for you. You can get Locked On Nebraska ad-free, members-only Discord access, and more. Check out the link in the description of this episode. If you're watching now on video, we'll send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen Locked On College Football. Thanks. Talk to you tomorrow.